I want to welcome you to the Lunch and Learn, a monthly meeting on Zoom to help parents have a better understanding of what our kids are facing on social media and the ways that we can identify and manage all the harmful activity and things that are going on that sometimes we may not know about. These meetings are planned to be about 45 minutes in length, and each month we're going to focus on a different topic and have at the end, we'll have a Q&A with the parents. Before I introduce today's speaker, a little background on our show sponsor, CyberSafely. It is an artificial intelligence scanning software developed to increase student safety on social media. When the AI identifies a potential issue on a child's social media account, it sends an alert to the parents or any other predetermined recipient, and then they can determine if they want to take further action. Mr. Jack Cunningham. He is the superintendent of Cardinal Local School District. Throughout his educational journey, Jack has served as a teacher, as a building administrator of 2 elementary schools, and as high school, as well as serving as the director of curriculum and school improvement. After graduating from Mount Union College with a teaching degree, he earned a master in educational administration and superintendent certification from Francis University. That is a mouthful. So he is well qualified to speak on this. He also received a master's of teaching from Mary Grove College. On our topic today is going to be how social media has become a drain on our students and their school activities during the day, and just kind of what we can do and what he's seeing that we need to do to kind of help them and to prevent this. Like I said, we are going to have a Q&A at the end. And if you have any questions for Jack, all I ask is that you hold them and type them in the chat feature. And then at the end, we will go through all of them. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Jack Cunningham.
Hi, everybody. I don't know if I can't see anybody, so I don't know if that's right or not. So Annette, can you help me? Can you see me?
Yeah, it's showing that it's on Tony's screen. I can't see you, Jack.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't see myself either. So if you can't see me, let somebody know. And if you, it's probably better if you don't see me, to be honest with you. So thank you for that introduction, and thanks for inviting us here. So as we get through this, I also want you to know that our building leadership team of administrators are on the calls too. So when we get to that Q&A, they will be able to answer probably some more detailed and things that they're dealing with every day in the educational world, especially when it deals with smartphones and social media. So thanks for having me. We're excited to talk about this topic because not just here at Cardinal Local, but probably across the country, we are dealing with high levels of kids and teens that are dealing with a lot of things. Social emotional issues is the big buzzword that we always are seem to be surrounded around and trying to deal with and help kids here throughout our buildings. Just a little background. So a lot of stuff that I get back from and I've been looking at and reading, I know our admin team is looking at it, is a publication in 2024 called The Anxious Generation. And that's written by Jonathan Haidt. And it's a wealth of knowledge. And if you read and look through that, and I know he has a lot of other articles and books that he's done that's kind of surrounded this subject, but it really hits home to our staff and our administrative team because those are things that we see a lot of. That he's talking about throughout that book. So The Anxious Generation, if you haven't got a chance to get to that, especially if you're an educator or a leader, you want to check it out. But some of those things for him, so he points out American teens, which he calls now the Generation Z, they're developed their social lives largely online through their smartphone or their personal device. So we see that a lot in our buildings. Kids always have smartphones, and we're not just talking about high school kids, we're talking about elementary kids, middle school kids. They seem to all have this smartphone or a personal device. So they use those devices for their social development and their social lives through social media outlets. Facebook, well, kids don't use a lot of Facebook, but TikTok, all those different new things that kids try to use. Online video games, that's a big thing for our young men that are doing that in other internet-based activities. So they're learning, but not participating in a play-based childhood, as John Haidt talks about. Like you and I did, we probably grew up in a play-based childhood, outside doing things, playing different sports, playing activities, jumping rope, with kids around us and a lot of our friends. So what kids today are doing, they call it the phone-based childhood, which is during one of those pivotal times in their development through puberty, stuff like that, that they're learning how socializing, friendships, conflict resolution, those type of things. They're not doing that play-based, face-to-face. They're doing that on their phones. So that creates a lot of issues for kiddos in our neck of the woods. Not socializing face-to-face, maybe building shallow relationships, not taking physical risks like outside playing around. Can I jump over this? Can I not jump over that? They can do that by pushing a button on their video game to do that. So this phone-based childhood also shows that the development of an increased high percentage of some areas that we deal with, which we consider social and emotional learning, high anxiety in kids. And if you look at the research and some of the graphic, that percentage is like 100% increase since 2010. Same thing with high rates of depression, both boys and girls, over 100%, more than 150% or higher range since 2010. And then something that's alarming to us that we see a lot of, and it's hard for us to help, is self-harm. And that's especially evident in a lot of our young ladies that deal on social media and do these things. There's a lot of more self-harm episodes. And I think some of the research is like, it's like 200% increase of ER visits for girls, over the last decade or so, or 20 years or so, with kids that are going in for self-harm. And then something also we deal with, cyber and regular bullying. So easier to deal with, but those are issues that we deal with a lot in our K-12 buildings. So phone-based childhood too, as we talk about smartphones, social media, those things are also interrupting and harming some of the key areas of that fundamental development for kiddos. 3 areas I like to talk about that we see a lot of: social deprivation. So what I mean is, what we see is that less face-to-face time spent with friends. I think research says in the early 2000s, kids spent about 160 minutes a day with their friends or peers having face-to-face interactions. 2020, that research dropped down to 40 minutes a day. Some other areas we see: meeting up with friends after school or on the weekends. It's about a 50% change since the 90s. Like 50% of kids probably did that regularly. Now they're reporting 25% of kids do that face-to-face, meeting up with friends. Also, social deprivation, the number of close friends that kids report having. So a few close friends, that's also decreased a lot since the 80s. 80% of kids used to say they had a small number of close friends that they had, which now the 2020, it's 60% is what they're reporting. So social deprivation is definitely a huge aspect that we see in our buildings every day. And I'll get a little more into that, about how that looks. Another area that we've got to deal with that kids are not getting enough is sleep deprivation. So 50% of kids, I think, report that they don't get at least 7 hours of sleep on average every night, which we know when they're not getting sleep, they're already a teenager, so they're already irritable. So they get anxiety, depression, poor learning habits because they don't get enough sleep. And then the third part that we deal with a lot of is attention fragmentation. So I think in a book that I read, it says smartphones are the kryptonite for attention, which we see that on the day-to-day here in our buildings. So let me give you a scenario. So even at Cardinal, we have a cell phone policy. You're not allowed to have your cell phone out on your, or out visible during the day. You have to put it in a pouch, or you have to keep it in your locker. Kids have it in the building. So if you're a social media user, which most of our kids are, even a regular type, you have it in your pocket, it's buzzing. You have it on silent, or it's buzzing in your pocket. Teacher's teaching, but every minute or so, and if you're a heavy user, it's probably every 30 seconds that phone is buzzing, and that's taking your attention away from what we're trying to do in class. And what's it buzzing about? Well, it's buzzing about their social media. Someone liked their page, or their comment, or commented on their comment, or getting a notification from somebody they're following, a celebrity or a thing that's working. All those are coming into that phone all the time and distracting that kid. So now, even though you have a cell phone policy, they don't have it out. It's already fragmenting that attention span. So class is over, they're in their locker, they're looking at their phone, or they go to lunch, they're on their phone, they're looking. So they're not building relationships with our kids in between classes with their friends. They're building relationships with that phone. So those are three big areas that we see a lot of that we deal with. So I did a little thing about how it affects us in our everyday operation of the district. Students don't have focus throughout the day. Their phone's buzzing all the time, distraction from learning. Teachers don't get their attention because they're worried about what are they doing? Are they paying attention? So it distracts from their instruction as they're trying to provide that. We also have high rates of discipline and counseling services that we spend time with every day. Our principals and our counselors, and they're dealing with issues on social media, bullying, internet games that have nothing to do with education and most likely aren't really part of the day. It happened outside of the day or it happened coming in. Someone's home sick, so they're talking about somebody else and it gets to be that way. And then the biggest issue too is students lack that social skill development because they're relying on their phone to build those relationships, which are most likely shallow relationships with people they don't even know, will never meet, or they might not even be who they say they are. So we have to sort through that almost every day, multiple times a day to do that. When we get to Q&A, I know people always ask me what solutions, what should you do? What can we do? And I mean, we don't have the answer. We're educators. So, but we're relying on experts to help us with that. But it's going to take a lot of people on the same page to look out what's best for kids. So just some things I've jotted down. What could happen? First thing, we need the government or tech companies support in what we're doing. We need help to do that and to monitor that. So some of those things that we've talked about, there is an age verification online, which is 13, but anybody can get online and click that I'm 13, even if you're 11. There's no monitoring of that. So we need better age verification features on those things to happen, especially from our companies that are using that, and give parents an easy way to make sure they click that it is harder for kids to say yes or no to that. Make it reverse of what it is. It's hard to find some of those parental controls in those settings. Let's make it reverse of that to do that. And then raise the internet access for kids to be considered adults on the internet, which is now 13 to 16. We also need parents to help. So we need parents to refrain from giving kids smartphones until they're in high school. Before that, if they have to have a phone, make sure that those basic flip phones that don't have all that access to that internet and outside world. And more importantly, kind of monitor the use and the access of that phone. So once we have smartphones, if you remember 15, 20 years ago when you had the computer desktop, it was in your living room or dining room and you're on there, everybody sees what you're doing and doing that. But once kids got a smartphone, then they have 24/7 access. And a lot of that access is behind closed doors in their room. Maybe when they're supposed to be sleeping at night, they're on their phone, seeing who's texting, who's liking their posts. So if we can monitor that to make sure kids get a good night's sleep and have that control a little bit. And then really the only solution for schools, I mean, I don't know how that works. Everybody has cell phone, most everybody has cell phone policies, hard to enforce. Teachers spend a lot of time enforcing it instead of teaching. So I would believe that, the easiest answer to say is have phone-free schools, but is the hardest solution to come up with because you need a lot of cooperation from teachers and parents to make that happen. But that gives the kids opportunities to actually be kids for 6 or 7 hours a day. And don't let their learning be distracted during that day. Give them an opportunity to do their learning and try new things and build skills and relationships without the pressure of checking that phone all the time. So I think in short, that's kind of my little spiel, I think, about what we were talking about. And right now, I know we might have Mr. Garish, Paul Garish, our high school principal, Brian George, our high school assistant principal, and Bob Kajala, our elementary principal, I believe are online here with us. So we can open it up for question and answers, or any more discussion, or some thoughts about what we do during the day.
Okay, yeah, love that. Anybody that would like to ask them a question, just unmute yourself and ask. And then, Jack, is your camera on? Is there a way you can turn your camera on so they can see your face?
Oh, I thought it wasn't on.
Mm-mm.
Okay, hold on. Let me see here. Oh, it might be. Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's saying that it's on.
Jack, there you. We still can't see you, Jack.
I can see your name now at least, but I can't see you.
Huh. I cannot. I don't know.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have any questions for any of these principals that are on here?
I have a quick question. With this phones, you had mentioned it's hard to enforce the cell phone policy. What is a standard phone policy right now, like for even in the high school? Because I could imagine it's almost next to impossible to get the phones off these kids. So, what is the idea or the ideal policy that you would want?
Yeah, I can jump in here. Paul Garrish, principal at Cardinal High School. Hey, there's Jack.
Hey,
Um,
Oh, there you are.
so the policy that we have, or the rule that we have, I guess, in place at Cardinal High School is, we put cell phone, those calculator pouches, basically. So we put cell phone pouches in each classroom. We are banking on the fact that, that's the expectation. We communicate that to kids. Some of them do it, some of them don't. We are also banking on the fact that our teachers are going to enforce that rule, which many do, some don't. But the other thing too is, we kind of have tweaked the rule a little bit, like it's either in the pouch or it's out of sight. Because again, we're not gonna get in an argument with the student and get in a fight over, give me your cell phone, because then it just becomes, for us, it becomes insubordination if they're doing that, and then that's kind of a whole different route that we're taking in terms of discipline and things like that. I mean, it's a battle for sure. It is not perfect, and Lori, I think, asked that question. Lori,
Yes.
it's you use the term next to impossible. It's hard. It's hard to
Oh, I
enforce.
couldn't imagine. No,
I'm
yeah.
gonna be honest with you. I was nervous when we put in the cell phone pouch policy. I had a parent meeting during open house and all that, and actually the parents like applauded, and some of them stood up like, "Hey, this is great." Well, and it is great in concept, but it's hard. I mean, there are some schools, Lori, that they've gone to cell phone lockers,
Yeah.
right? Where kids come in and there's actually a set of lockers that they put their cell phone in. Well, kids will work around anything. So you've got kids bringing old cell phones and putting them in the lockers, so it looks like there's a cell phone there, right? So it's tough. I think the hardest part for me is, and Brian, our associate principal, can chime in on this, is that I would say at least 80% of what comes across our desks as for discipline is either happening on social media or started on social media, and then it's turned into something that's spilled over into school, like an argument, a fight, whatever that is. At least 80%. Maybe that might even be low. Because kids' social lives are on the phone. Like that's
Got
their
it. Yeah.
yeah, right, Lori. Like my social life was what Jack said, going out, playing with my friends, building those relationships. That's all happening over a phone now, right? And I don't even have to leave my bedroom to do that. And that's the scary part. Brian, I don't know if you wanted to chime in.
No, and I'll add to that and I'm sure many of you have the same experience, is that a lot of my time is spent, okay, what was said on Snapchat Messenger. When was it said? Was it said outside of school? If it was said outside of school, we're calling a parent. We're trying to chase down, some things that are going on, and it eats up a lot of our time and eats into valuable time that we could be using to improve instruction. All of our physical fights that we've had in both the high school and the middle school have pretty much originated on social media. So it's a huge problem for us. And then, we in general, we have pretty good parental support when it comes to the phone policy, but we do get some parental pushback. There are some parents who are saying, well, I'm not gonna condone that. I'm not gonna have my son or daughter not have their phone on them. It's a safety issue, which we know is more of a convenience issue for the parent and wanting to reach them. So I think our policy has been pretty effective. It has improved. Our teachers have reported it's improved some instructional time, but we still have some work to do and some refinement on that, and just keep working towards that goal. So
Okay, Dr. Levy, I see that you have your hand up.
Okay. Yeah. I'll keep my camera off. Oh, actually, I'll keep. So that was a great talk. First of all, thank you. And I'm glad you said a lot of things that were like, yeah, kind of thinking already. Couple of things, just as a pediatric psychiatrist, I'd love your take on. One is when it comes to like teaching kids about social media etiquette and things like that. Because I mean, yeah, you're right. There's all these problems that are happening, and yet we also know that it's A, here to stay, and B, the more you try to fight it and push back, you're just risk running in power struggles with kids. Which is exactly what you're saying. And I know this is my personal experience. For kids, anything over 20 is old. So if I say, hey, here's how, 21, you're an old person. So like, yeah, they just see us as old geezers and stuff like that, even though I don't feel old at all. My point being is that I'm wondering, is there any opportunities to ally with young people in terms of helping them learn better etiquette with social media? And is that happening, or is there a need for that? Or what are your opinion on that?
I mean, there's always a need for that, and we're always up to educating when we can. But it's tough to do that with the time that we have in our buildings. So instructional time is already limited for our schedule and doing those things, but we would always try to make do with what we're trying to get done. But the key to that is teaching that, but not giving kids that access to doing that during the school day. So it's kind of a mixed bag. And we have the parents that say, well, if there's an emergency, I gotta get a hold of my kid. If there's an emergency and your kid's worried about their phone, they're going to miss important instruction on how to be safe. So it creates even a more safety issue with having that phone, because kids aren't listening and doing those things. So, but that's hard for parents with this. Everybody's worried about, well, where's my kid? He can't go outside and play. Someone's going to take him, doing those type of things. What we don't worry about is there's better or easier access for kids that are inappropriate happenings during that phone time than it is being outside and playing. So you don't know who kids are talking to and what they're doing and who's getting access to them, because you're not monitoring what they're doing. Not impossible. It's pretty hard for parents to monitor what kids are doing.
Oh, let me make a couple comments. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Jess. Social media by its nature is not a value neutral thing. Companies, because I'm now in my next book is called The Outrage Machine, and it's about what social media does. It is designed to get engagement. It is an engagement machine, because advertising is always present in the background of social media, but it's an engagement machine. So it makes adults whatever you most engage with. And what they've found through studies, and you can look it up, is negative things that are stimulating to you will lead to higher engagement than positive. If you're happy about something, you're just, okay, great. If something really bothers you, you're going to engage it, right? And so our kids are not free. We can teach them about social etiquette, but watch how adults act on social media or anything, because it is designed to get you to your worst, not your best, because that's how you get engagement. Our kids are much younger than adults. Their brains are still not developed. But see, to Jack's point early on, you can just lie about being 13. And we're all, once you have access and you step through that portal on the internet, through the portal, we're all the same age and have the same access. So we're letting kids who are 8, 7, 6 play in the same sandbox with 70-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and 30-year-olds who have all kinds of different motivations, and a lot of them maybe not so good. And it's really hard to imagine that when we let kids completely have unfettered access to the devices, and I have 2 teenagers, I actually have 2 20-year-olds and a teenager now, that I've even seen, even if a kid tries to not get involved in drama. Let's say when my daughter's on the volleyball team, someone makes a bad play, a girl on the team makes a comment. If she doesn't back the girl, now that quadrant of the team's mad at her. If she makes and backs the other person, the other one, if she is quiet, they're both mad at her because they're all keeping score on the like button, which was a new thing that was introduced to help cause an explosion of negativity, because now you're taking a position on everything you like or share. And so kids who even try to stay out of it are in it. I think it's super complicated. If there was an easy answer, it would already be done. But I think we also have to be really aware that social media is designed to basically get engagement, and that brings out the worst in just about everybody if you're not really aware of it.
I would say too, the etiquette piece, Jess, that you talked about, like trying to teach that. To me, it goes even beyond trying to teach. Like, this is what I do in my office with kids, is just have real conversations with them. And we try to talk about just etiquette of conversation with people, right? Like etiquette, like how many times have I said, Brian, that have you said, or Bob or Jack or whoever, like how many times have we said, would you actually say that to that person in person? Like, would you actually, what you put on social media or what you typed in that text, would you actually say that to them? And I can't tell you how many times kids are like, well, no, why would I do that? Like, it's about teaching how to have a conversation with somebody and what's appropriate. And listen, I'm a 55-year-old dude, Jess. So to your point before about getting old, apparently I'm a fossil at this point, right? But but my point is that we learned at a young age, like, this is how we want to have conversations with people. And my parents taught me that, right? My parents taught me, my dad, shake his hand, look in his eyes and say hello, and it's nice to meet you. And all that's, look at us right now, you guys, we're meeting like this. We're meeting over screens, right? So to your point, Jess, that's not going away, right? This is what it is. So we've got to get back to the people part of things, right? Like when kids come into my office, I'll shake their hand and I'll look them in the eye and I'll say, have a seat. Let's talk about this. You know, it's about building relationships. I mean, these guys know one of the things that I tell every kid before they leave my office, whether they're in trouble or not, the last thing I say to them before they leave my office is, I love you. Like, I tell them that. And I've had kids cry in my office and go, I've never had anybody tell me that before. Right. So to me, it's about the relationship building part of things. And so I think if you learn how to be a person who can talk to somebody and have a conversation, I mean, here's the other example. I had a first year teacher who came to my room and said, I'm having trouble with so-and-so. What did you do? I emailed the parent. Okay, did you call the parent? I don't think I can do that. Like, that was a teacher, right? Like, that was a teacher going, I don't think I can do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I had to sit there with this 23-year-old teacher and go, call the parent and have a conversation. And I sat with them, right? So, you know, I've done things in my last school district I was in. We were talking about the development of the brain, right? And I'm like, listen, guys between 25 and 27, that's when they're they're fully developed. And girls between 25 or between 23 and 25, whatever the numbers are, right? And I was looking at my staff and I'm like, holy crap, that's like half the people sitting in this auditorium right now. And it's my staff, right? So I think, you know, it's a battle. Like, it's a battle that's going to continue. And, you know, we got to do the best we can. And when we discipline with not because we like to discipline, but we discipline because we want behavior to change. And if we want behavior to change, way back to what you started with, Jess, that starts with the education and the teaching of the etiquette. And that comes, that starts at home. Like and I'm not passing the buck, right? It starts at home, and then we as educators then need to take that next step with them. Well, I mean, you know the term, right? It takes a village, right? That's what we look at. So that was a really long answer, and I apologize.
That was a great answer. Thank you. Thank you guys. I appreciate this. It kind of confirms what I think too about, so yes, thank you all for a good answer.
And we do have some of our programs that are trying to teach and work with kids about like our YLP folks that come in and meet with some of our kids. The kids actually recognize that it's an issue. But kind of like me talking to my 65-year-old aunt who smokes, like, Aunt Debbie, this is going to kill you. And it's kind of like, it's that addiction piece of it as well. And what we also find is that, again, a lot of our kids that have the same sort of executive functioning skills that hinder them in the classroom are having those same problems with the phone as well, because as you would imagine.
Have y'all seen how, like, kind of explain to everybody how a program like Cyber Safely, something that kind of would alert the parents of what's really going on, how would that help you as educators?
Well,
think
we're
first
struggling
thing-
right now with that part of that, because parents don't want educators to know about what's happening because they're afraid of the discipline and what could happen with that. So
Right.
the most important part of that is getting parents see the importance of it, but kids don't. They think you're spying on them. They think you're doing those things. So to getting kids to understand that we're not looking at you, we're looking at people trying to get to you. And we want to make sure that those people are vetted enough that it's not somebody that shouldn't be around you. Or if if you're hurting or something, you should be put in that situation when someone's saying, hey, I'm going to harm myself, shouldn't be there alone. Somebody should be alerted to that to help. Because when you look at that research and the stuff's happening, it's easier to self-harm because there's nobody with you. So I can say it if nobody says anything, or somebody says that you need that interaction. We're missing that interaction piece from our young people. So we talk about, they don't have that conflict resolution. They don't have that how to do it, how to physically do it, because it's easy to be typing and being far away, or you might not be that far away. You just don't know where you're at. So you don't have those kickball games anymore where somebody's out at first, but there's an argument and there's some kind of conflict. There's a resolution between the people there. It doesn't take adults to help you. They can develop those skills by playing around and participating in those things. But right now we don't have that. And
I think with the Cyber Safely thing is, like, for us, what Jack said is some of the pushback would be, oh, it's a gotcha, right? Cyber Safely is a gotcha. Like, you're gonna discipline our kids, you're gonna kick them off the football team, you're gonna not allow them to be in the flag line, you're gonna whatever it is. And for us, it's what it says, right? It's a safety thing for us. Like, the last thing I want to do, or the last phone call I want to get, is somebody hurt themselves, or somebody hurt somebody else, or like, those are the things that, to us, when kids used to call out for help, they would go to somebody, they would talk to somebody, where now it's, I'm going to post this and I'm going to see, to Bob's point, first of all, how much attention am I going to get from this? Right. And how, and I'm calling out for help at this point. Calling out for help is way different now than it was when I was younger. Right. Like, it's just different. So to us, it's let's prevent bad things from happening. Let's prevent a sexual predator from getting a hold of your child. I'm a dad. I have kids that are 29 and 27, and I still worry about that on social media, right? So that's the thing with something like Cyber Safely is it would be more of, it's not a gotcha. It's we want to help with this. We want to be aware. So if something happens here at school and we get information, we can call the parent. We can work with the parent and say, hey, FYI, I can't tell you how many times I talk to the parents on the phone, and I'm like, I am not calling you as a principal of a high school right now. I am calling you of a dad of 2 daughters. right? That's the part that we have to kind of get to.
We have, even in a small,
Go ahead.
Right, Brian.
even in a small district, what? Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Andy.
Brian.
Sorry.
No, I just wanted to reinforce what Paul said, and I know these aren't the only two, but in the last couple of years, there's been at least 2 cases where we've had to track down something like that, 3 actually, and it's difficult because you have parents, and then you have friends, and you have law enforcement, and you have us, and this cyber safely helps coordinate all that also when
Yeah.
that kind of thing comes up, because you all kind of have access to it, and I mean, it took weeks to track things down 2 or 3 years ago, the last one I was personally involved in. I mean, those are real situations that come up at school more than I would like. And so I think that this is an avenue to kind of help that and keep kids much safer than what they are right now. That it's a real risk, a real danger for a lot of, especially I noticed a lot with like 8th and 9th graders. They're at that age. So that's all. I just wanted to reinforce what Paul was saying about that. Sorry, Brian.
Even in a small district like us, we've had 3 instances that I personally dealt with where a young person was talking to an older person somewhere, wherever, and there was conversation in that thread about, oh, come meet me. And we actually had a senior who I kind of checked in with every day, said hi as she's walking in, and she's like, yeah, I have this issue I want to talk to you about. And it was a pretty legit, like, trying to extort this young lady into
And her
meeting up with
family.
the person
And
and doing
her
something
family.
she didn't want to do.
And
So-
her family.
And her family as well.
Do y'all find that parents are either involved, like super involved, want to be involved, but don't know how, or are kind of like, well, this is just how the world is, and just kind of let their kids have carte blanche?
I think it's both, Lindsay, to be honest with you. You have parents that want to be involved that don't know how. You have parents that throw up their hands and say, this is what it is, right? This is what the world is right now. You also have parents, and I probably have been there as a parent, to be honest with you, that are like, well, everybody's got their cell phone. Everybody's, so you don't want to, I want to protect my children, but I don't want to be that overprotective, overbearing parent to the point where they're pushing me away either. Right. So I think it's all the above. I mean, that's my short answer to that.
So you, as educators talking to parents, what would essentially be the perfect, not the perfect parent, but you know what I mean? Like the perfect level of kind of interaction, the perfect, like, how would you like to see parents responding more? Like, what would you like to see more of, or what can parents do?
Can I start?
Get it.
I really am passionate about this because I'm the elementary principal. Okay. And so it would probably shock people to know what 8-year-olds are doing with their smartphones, and nobody's watching. I mean, we're getting kids who are 9 sending bra pics because they've been asked for. Okay. And like, this is coming into they're 9 years old. And so it starts super young. And what I think is we need to message to parents, because like when you're a parent, and we've all been there, if you're a parent of teens or older, they all want what everybody else has. They want that cell phone. And in the book that Jack was talking about, we've done really good about keeping kids from walking down the road and getting like pulled into a car, because we keep them in our yards, we keep an eye on them. But parents are buying kids cell phones that lets the boogeyman in the back door. And they're not watching what their kids do. And again, you can have phone controls put on, but like if you've ever tried to do that, and I did that with my son who's now 15 when he was little, it's cumbersome and it's not real. It doesn't work as well as you would like it to. And so our kids at a very young age are getting this thing that takes them to anywhere they want to go. And they're getting to see the most vile pornography, the most vile violence, anything you can think of at 6 and 7 years old. You would be amazed at the things that kids have sat here in my office and told me that they have gotten from YouTube videos and other things. And they're talking about at lunch and they have no real conception of it. but they've seen it. Now it's burned into the, you can't put it back in Pandora's box. So if
And
I'm saying
it's normal for them, right,
it's
Bob? Like
normal.
it's the norm.
It's the norm. Everybody's doing it. And what I would say is if I could talk to younger parents when their kids are 3 and 4 and 5 and not preach at them, but say, listen, you have to understand that I get that we're worried about someone snatching our kid at the playground, but you really ought to be worried about someone snatching your child's soul, their innocence, when they're 7 sitting in their bedroom and you think they're safe, but their mind's being attacked. And
That's awesome, Bob.
and you can't put it back. You can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. So I'm not sure what that looks like and what our role could be in that. But I think messaging from the government and from nonprofits should be something to the effect of there's always tomorrow. You don't need to give your kid, and not just smartphones, because like a tablet's just as bad. It uses apps, it uses all the same things. You need to really be careful of what you're letting in, because once it's in, you can't get it out. And that book that Jack was talking about, if you have a group of friends, maybe make a deal that there's more playtime, that you're all going to agree not to get your kids' phones until later. And I get it. As a dad, hey, my kid's starting to play sports, I need them to have a device. But he argues, get them a flip phone. It works. They can text, they can call.
My son got a Gab phone, which all it does is calls and text, and it can send a picture, but it screens what's received. And at first he was like, Mom, oh my gosh. But you know what? Now he will tell me, he's like, that's the best decision ever. I missed so much middle school drama because I didn't have the capability to, be in it. And
Kind of in line with what Bob was saying, I think parents just need to understand. I don't think parents understand the real danger their kids are in with the phones. I mean, I talk to my kids' friends, parents, and I see it every day here, but they work other types of jobs and they have no clue what they think their kids are, because they go, I check the phone every day. Well, there's ways that kids know that parents don't, to kind of not show that all the time. So I just don't think parents have any conception what their kids are getting onto, and what they're being exposed to. Like Bob was saying, once that happens, and it's happening younger and younger, that innocence is over. They're just. I always tell parents, when I was principal, I would always tell parents, whatever you were doing in 9th and 10th grade, your kids are doing in 4th and 5th at this point. They're not necessarily doing, but what they're seeing and exposed to. So there has to be some component where parents have a better understanding of what's going on. Because if parents really knew what their kids were accessing, I think there'd be more shock and outrage, and something must be done. And right now, it seems like parents don't want to deal with that. I don't know. Some do, but a lot don't.
I think too what Andy is saying is, like, parents need like a better understanding, but we as parents, like, we got to be willing to make hard decisions, right? Like that's the part that, like, I'll give you this example. Well, first I would say this. I can't tell you how many times we have parents that will say, well, my child would never. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, just don't ever say that. Right? Like, don't ever say that. You just don't know. Like, my child would never. But when my daughter Emily she's 27. When she was in 6th grade, she came to my wife and I, and she said, I want a cell phone. And I was like, well, you're not getting a cell phone. And we agreed with, back when my kids were younger, that when they started playing sports in middle school, we were going to get them phones to call us, whatever. And Emily's like, I want a cell phone. I'm like, you're not getting a cell phone. She's like, I want a cell phone. You're not getting a cell phone. We just went back and forth. And her last comment was, well, everyone has a cell phone. And I looked at her and I go, that's not true. You don't have a cell phone. And then I counted how many steps that she stomped upstairs and all that, right? And she was mad. But to your point, Lindsay, like, Emily will come back to us and go, you know what? Great decision. Like, she's a teacher now, right? Yeah. She teaches 4th graders, right? So she's like, great decision, right? And in the moment of it, I'm like, oh crap, like all my kids all their friends have these phones. Am I a bad parent for not? But we got to make tough decisions, right? That's the hard part. So,
Okay, it looks like we had a question, but I think it got answered. So, is there anybody else that has a quick question? And then if not, we are going to wrap this up because we've gone over our time, but honestly, in the best way possible. I feel like this was very informative from multiple levels of like a child's age progression, you know, all the different schools. So that's really what we needed. I mean, you know, this may be something that we decide, hey, let's do another roundtable type discussion, because I feel like you guys have a ton of great information. And as a mom of a almost high schooler and still elementary schooler and an almost middle schooler, I'm kind of like, these are all the things I need to know. My kids don't have social media because I work with cyber safely and I know too much. So that's really the reason. But thank you, Jack, so much for coming on here and doing all of this. We hope, does anybody else have a question before I wrap up?
I did see the one question in there about how much impact is this having on the teaching profession?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how much impact it's having on like people going into teaching, to be honest with you. I think it has more impact on once they're in the teaching profession, that they, like, we had somebody come in and talk to our staff about, don't do this on social media as a professional teacher. Don't do this on social media, right? So I think that's the impact it has, is it's more of the aftermath of, oh, I probably shouldn't have been texting my student who's 16 years old in my biology class, or just we did not have that happen, by the way. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's the part that I see more, because we're hiring kids, right? We're hiring 22 and 23-year-old kids. So that's the impact that I see. I saw that question. I just want to make sure we answered that.
Paul, that is from me, Don Montgomery.
Hey, Coach.
How you doing, Jack? I just wanted to, you know, I probably was in contact with almost 100 kids this year, and I always ask them what they want to major in and all that stuff. And I was just wondering that because I only had one kid tell me that they wanted to be a teacher. Whereas when I was a coach in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, almost everybody wanted to teach and coach, you know, I mean, or go into business. And, you know, being in higher education, I was only in high school for 1 year as the dean of students. And that was a major problem when I was at Massillon High School, dealing with the kids with you know, the teachers didn't have the support unless an administrator would come to the room to help out. And we are far beyond, you know, what was happening in 2015 at this point in time. But I really believe that, you know, the administrative support, the support of the parents will greatly aid the teaching profession, because I think a lot of the teachers don't feel supported because, you know, I mean, they're dealing with these problems, or they feel like the problems are too big for them to handle. So then they just shove them off to the administration. Something has to be done to save the profession, to save the family, because this is a lot bigger. I mean, it's kind of like whittling away, and it's a devil's tool. That's the way I look at it. It's the devil's tool. So, Jack, thanks to you and your staff for everything. Did an awesome job today. And thank you for helping us out.
Okay,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, we're good. Thank you, Coach. You know that. Anything for you.
Our
thank you.
speaker next time is going to be David Myers. He is a partner at the Buckingham Law Firm. His area of practice is cybersecurity and data privacy. He is going to speak to us about the laws surrounding online usage and privacy for children. An email is going to go out with more information on him.